Fabulous. Right. So, massive thank you to Sarah Jones for hosting this Q&A Zoom session, stroke chat, stroke kicking off Don't Walk Your Dog Day, which is coming up on Wednesday, April the 2nd. So, thank you, Sarah.
You're very welcome. I'm not quite sure I've done much hosting. You had to go through it all, as usual. Not very good in this department,
You
but
did just
yeah,
fine.
thank you for coming on and chatting to people. So yeah,
Yeah.
so like Nikki says, we're hoping to do this a little bit more often so that you get to know, you obviously know about me and what I do, but I think it's really important for people in the group to meet Nikki and find out what Nikki does because it's really, really interesting. I've learned so much from Nikki myself over the last few years, so it would be good to share her.
Lovely. Share me all over. I love that. And do you know what? Doing question and answer sessions is something, it's probably one of my favorite things. And like whether it's online like this or whether it's in, at the shows with you, like the yellow space zones, like there's nothing like having a chat with someone, finding out a few snippets about their dog and their situation. And normally I can find one or two little things that I can just give them as a little, have a try with this. And, and we know like little tiny tweaks can really unlock something magical. So yeah, I love doing these. So if anybody's got any questions for future ones, then shout out, put them in the group, and we'll get them set up. Um, so thank you for those of you that have joined us. Let me just check what setting I've got record on just to see. We're on gallery. Okay, that's cool, I think. Heidi that joined us, she's off camera at the moment, but we're just having a quick chat before we hit record. So what I might do is just give a brief summary of what she said to us. So she's got reactive dog. It's a Dachshund, and originally they're from South Africa, and they've moved over to the UK. And what she was looking for was, I mean, she's learned lots of techniques as to how to help her dog on walks, how to help her come away from triggers, how to cope with triggers. Um, but in the spirit of Don't Walk Your Dog Day, thinking about ideas that we can do with our dogs at home. And what's even more relevant, I think, for people, that if people have got a small dog, how can you do this without, it doesn't have to be all about lashings of food everywhere. We obviously want to make sure our dogs stay lean and healthy. So making sure they're not putting on weight by using lots of additional treats. So we'll talk about that. Um, and Also Heidi's Dachshund is raw fed, which is lovely. So my dog is part raw fed. He's probably about, I might just pop Heidi on
Yeah, I was
mute.
going to say, I
There
think
we go.
yes.
Um, so yeah, Bodie's probably 65-70% raw fed. I do use some cold pressed food and some homemade treats and other things that are natural. So I use things like puffed lung and freeze dried beef, things that I think are as close to the nutritional profile of raw as I can get to. Um, but so let's, and also she said that her dog's not that into toys, and which if she does have like a stuffy soft toy, she likes to rip it up. So I've got a few things that I could talk about there, which I'm sure they will be helpful for other people as well. So yeah, so we want to keep our dogs at a nice lean weight. There is evidence that strongly suggests that even just a little bit of extra weight can have life shortening impacts and quality of life impacts for our dogs. So yeah, we want to keep them nice and lean. Even if our dogs are raw fed, I think we can still get useful training and enrichment and support out of food that is raw. So one of the things I use, Sarah, I haven't got your squeezy reward to hand actually. I've got one. Ah, yeah, okay. So here we go. We have different squeezy rewards. Sarah's is cool because it comes on one of the zoop retractable lines, so you don't lose it. Nicely demonstrated. I don't have instructions on this one. Mine's in my
On a
bag.
lanyard.
um, so I would use something like this Eve for raw food. So if I was taking food out and about with me or I wanted to do some training at home, I'm able to use some of Bodie's raw food in these squeezy feeding things. So depending on the size of the hole, so the squeezy rewards that Sarah has a really nice petite hole, which means for smooth, there we go. So it's probably what about a millimeter and a half?
Yeah.
So quite small. It's perfect for smooth things that are licking. So things like natural yogurt, like
Creamy,
squeezy cheese.
creamy squeezy cheese.
I've used things like if you like products like the JR pate, or if your raw is smooth, it won't. In using it through the little hole, it won't go. A chunky raw or a reasonably chunky raw won't go through it. But you can mix up things like JR pate and stuff like that with a little bit of bone broth or some water or some yogurt or kefir or something like that. So you can get licking pastes and use that small nozzle. But with Sarah's, what you can do, and I tend to do it with this one as well, even though this one has a slightly bigger nozzle, I can just about get my little finger in there, but it's still, for raw, it's still too narrow, really. So what I would do is with Sarah's, I tend to just unscrew the top. So if you're so you can fill it up with raw. If you're using any supplements or anything like that, I would mix all that into my raw, and then I would put some of it into this. And as I'm walking
Apparently you
along,
can apparently you can make these holes bigger
right, okay, yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
So I guess you could get
Yeah,
like a sharp little standing knife or a
yeah,
craft knife. Yeah, that's a really good idea. But me being lazy, I would just unscrew the top, and I
yeah,
would just be feeding as I go. So
yeah.
you can use their normal raw food just from their daily allowance, and you can you can do that. Can you hear Bodie barking in the background? Is the mic not picking it up?
I've only noticed it because you said.
Okay, let's just say I didn't highlight that. Okay,
Yeah.
that means there's a letterbox has just gone. So I would take this on a walk, and where I would do something like hand touch or something like that, or a little check-in game, or say there is some trigger, which for Bodhi would mean overexcitement, but for a lot of dogs that might mean like stress or anxiety. Then I would get the dog to kind of look at me, maybe face away from the trigger if they can, and have a little lick of their raw food. So it can go out and about with you. And also, any of the training games that you play at home, you can be using this as a reward directly. So anything where you would give your dog a piece of food, you can just be giving them a little lick of that. I haven't really had too much trouble with dogs knowing how to sort of lick. Some dogs can get a bit mouthy with it. So that might just be something that we'd need to work through, but I don't have too much problems with it. Sometimes if you've got raw, just practical things that I've learned over the years of sometimes you just need to kind of like tap it down because if you've worked halfway through it, you need to just kind of like, get it down with. So just practical things.
Yeah. So
But
this
generally,
one is quite good because it hangs down.
yeah,
So if you
yeah,
hang it round you on a lanyard, then
it's
or on
ready
your
to go.
belt, it hangs down. So it always is filling itself, replenishing it.
Yeah, and of course, then you've got relatively mess-free hands, pretty much. Um, so using their raw, you can use in that way. Um, we talked about before, obviously things like raw, you can put onto different textures of lick mats and licking surfaces. Um, so one of the things that I've learned about lick mats over the years, and I'm a big fan of lick mats, through doing things like ACE free work, I've got much better observing Bodhi on lick mats and what he does with them and how he accesses them. So it's worth, not all lick mats are equal. There's lots of different types of lick mats, and there's lots of different textures. Some have got quite sort of square grid shapes to them. Some have got little bobbles. Some have got some trays. Yeah, I should have brought some props to hand. I have one to hand. I have one of Melissa's. I actually really like this one. It doesn't look like your average lick mat. It's more like a snuffle mat, but it's made of silicone. So I would put things like raw onto these like kind of petals. I would also put raw sort of in between them. And what Bodie does with this is he really does sort of lick. And I think the feeling, imagine the feeling of a dog's sensitive nose going through, they're incredibly soft, like little silicone petals. Um, for the lick mats that have got the sort of more rigid grooves, I find, yeah, so those are nice. Yeah, I've got one of the yellow ones that you gave me for Christmas. And I think the key thing is with lick mats, you really want to see that your dog is licking. And what I noticed with the ones that were too textured, Bodie would go in with his teeth and like kind of grate his teeth through the texture of the lick mat. So the smoother the lick mat for Bodie, the more likely he is to actually lick. And there's a big sensory difference between licking, and you often see their eyes kind of soften and kind of close a little bit, and they look a bit sort of like just chilled and blinky. And then the teeth sort of grinding version is much more animated. It's not the same kind of relaxation experience that maybe we want from a lick mat. So raw on lick mats is a great thing. I'm going to go all over the place. I'm just going to go off on tangents. This is these
You
things.
go off on tangents. It's our age.
um I've actually got a glass chopping board for Bodhi's food, because there was a book that I read, or I'm partway through reading, which it talks about one of the things, it talks about all sorts of different things in like the toxic things in the world, like filtered water and microplastics and things like that. And it has stopped me putting anything warm in the microwave in plastic containers. That's a big no-no. But I've also stopped using plastic chopping boards for Bodhi. I haven't replaced all my own ones yet because I'm more concerned about Bodhi's health than my own,
All
as
right.
is often the case. So Bodhi has a glass chopping board. I don't want microplastics going into Bodhi. Like there's enough chemical rubbish in the world. So he has a glass chopping board. It's a proper tempered glass, super hard. It's got little sticky feet on it, and we do all of his chopping, raw pet prep, etc., onto this glass chopping board. So to save washing up, what I decided to do is for his breakfast raw, I prep up his raw with all the bits and stuff that I put in it. His raw, his breakfast amount, I leave on the chopping board, and I just kind of like spread it out a little bit on the glass chopping board, and I put that down onto a little raised platform for Bodhi. I think that is his favorite licking thing.
Oh,
And
well.
it's completely smooth and it's quite cool. And the whole length of his tongue is properly cleaning the life out of it. And of course, there's never any teeth. So it might not be right for everyone. It's yet another accident thing that I've just discovered, just by being lazy and wanting to do less washing up. But he actually really likes licking off a completely smooth surface.
Oh, wow.
Um, so yeah, so um, you can it doesn't have to be texture in lick mats, doesn't it? More is not better.
Mm.
But those ones that you've got, Sarah, those round ones, they've got quite gentle grooves. I think they work well. I think
Yeah.
they work well as well. But even what's on the back of those? Have those ones got sticky feet? Or
Yes.
yeah, even thinking turning it over and trying the back
Oh, right.
doesn't,
Okay.
you don't always have
Yeah.
to use them for which way
Yeah.
up. So yeah, that can be useful. Um, then what I'd probably go on to, still talking about sort of Heidi's question and ways to use food without overusing food, not overfeeding. So I'm going to talk more and more about ACE-free work these
So
days.
just quickly, Heidi says he's on nutriment, which is
Yeah,
exactly what Bella's on.
yeah,
Um, and she does have the tube. I thought she did.
yeah,
Uh, she
lovely.
does have
Yeah,
this
so
tube
that for
too.
me is a great way. Is a great way. And the thing about enrichment generally is it's never, it should always be rewarding. And the dog gets to kind of say and describe and show to us what's rewarding and actually what's a bit frustrating. Um, say you are using some elements of dry food, and you can sprinkle them onto a towel, and you can sort of, or you can sprinkle them onto a lick mat or something like that. Sorry, a snuffle mat or something like that. Um, and you want calm exploration, not frenzied trying to get at the food. And I think there's so many different food puzzles around. Some food puzzles, some dogs love food puzzles, and they love the challenge, the mental stimulation. Other dogs, I think, get really frustrated by them. So it's about knowing your dog and knowing, and looking at how they are with it and going, does this look like a pleasurable experience? Like, say I like a whisper bar. Um, I don't particularly want to have to go run through any hoops in order to get the whisper bar. I just like to be able to open it up and eat it. Like, that's just my thing. I don't want to have to do something in order to get it. So know your dog and make sure it's enrichment. Right, let's just go to
Heidi says there's a message from Roseberry on the initial event
oh,
page.
oh no, I did see that. I am going to come to that. Yeah, yep, I do have that. So I will get to that once I've stopped rambling about this one. Uh,
So Bella's also on raw food, and
yeah,
I was the same. What can I do with her when she's on raw food?
yeah,
So cold pressed food, I sometimes will substitute that in it to do some other games.
yeah.
She is the same with because I've learned it from you. She'll be like 100% of a week on raw, and then other days when we're not doing it a lot, I will factor in some cold press. What would you recommend as a good cold press food, just a substitute to use just for games?
Yeah, at the moment I'm using two flavors that I've got from Wilson's. So I'm really liking Wilson's. Um, there are others. The allaboutdogfood.co.uk website is always a good place to go. You can look up your food, you can look up any other foods that you're looking at, and it gives you a sort of a nutritional percentage score, and high percentages are in the 80 and 90%, and some very cheap kibbles will be like really low.
Yeah.
So have a look about it. The interesting thing is looking at things like the amount of carbs and the amount of protein and things like that. And you're able to compare on this website, I think you can compare up to about 5 products at a time. It's really interesting when you start looking at it. I mean, I'm not a nutritionist, and it's always good to have a chat with a nutritionist at some point about your dog, but it's quite a good way of comparing. But for a cold pressed, like, I love the convenience, and that's why Bodie's not 100% bore fed, because I do want to be able to take some stuff out with me that I can chuck across somewhere. And obviously you can teach, I have seen people teach their dog, you treat, like, do this as, you chuck it as a fetch thing. Obviously you'd have to take it off your
Yeah.
your loop thing, but you can chuck it and you can teach them a retrieve in order to get their food. But sometimes you just want a bit more flexibility than that with some dry
Yeah.
food. So yeah, Wilson's I'm quite liking, and it's like it
Oh,
comes as
that's
a little
handy. They
jelly.
just done a lovely blog on Dogs in Yellow this month.
Yeah,
Wilson's
yeah.
did. So,
Yeah, and there's certain proteins that I'm avoiding with Bodhi. So we're using the salmon one, and it's got other nice things in it like seaweed and things like that. And the haggis one, which is basically lamb. Obviously
oh,
they're a
yeah.
Scottish company, so the haggis is
Yeah.
their lamb flavor. Yeah, and
Oh,
they do
lovely.
puppy ones, working dog ones.
Mm.
Yeah, so I quite like that one. Um, um, so yeah, so I was going to start talking a little bit about ACE free work in terms of things that you can do at home that don't have to involve lots of food. So ACE free work is setting up stations to give your dog an opportunity to explore and to move their body and to have an enjoyable experience. both mentally and physically, like moving their dogs know how to move their bodies, but they only get to make choices that we make available to them. So for instance, if you always feed your dog at a certain height, that's the only choice they have. Whereas if you did a little experiment, and ace free work is a really good way of doing this, of having that same food maybe split across three different textures, and have those, say there were three different types of lick mats or licking surfaces, having them at slightly different heights. You could have one on a slight angle. um I've got things like, I've used one of my garden chairs upturned on its arms, so it's like legs are sticking up in the air, and the underside of the chair gave me an angled station for me to put a lick mat on. So using their raw food in ace free work is totally possible, and a really nice way of seeing what are their preferences, and when they're moving, how do they organize their body when they're at each of these different stations that you've given them choices to. Which ones do they seem to spend longer at, or which one do they not seem as comfortable at? But ace free work is not just about food. It's not just about crunchy treats and licking and finding food. What was interesting that Heidi said was that she's not that into toys, but she likes to tear up a stuffy toy. Now for me, that's a really nice way of giving the dogs an opportunity to do something that is inherently very natural for that dog to do. So shredding something, like Bodie loves to get something, like if we have a stuffy toy, and he used to destroy all his toys, but if he has a toy that started to get a bit of a hole in it, his mouth knows exactly where that is, and he's very dexterous about finding it. And there comes a point that I go, actually, I'm okay for this toy to go to the toy heaven. Like, I'm gonna allow it as a, like, you can destroy it, and the pleasure he gets from destroying something, like it's a very dog thing to do. Imagine they found a carcass of some sort. Often they're going to be like peeling off the sinews and the tendons and all that kind of stuff. So you can give them a toy that you're happy. Maybe I'm assuming there wouldn't be any kind of eyes in it. I know some people get like toys from charity shops, like kiddies toys, and then they take the plastic eyes out of them and things
Yeah.
like that. You need to make sure there's nothing that they could ingest.
Yeah. I'd never thought about that, because you always think it's bad for a dog to chew or destroy something, where actually it's a natural thing that they
An
want to do.
outlet.
We're trying to
Yeah,
trying to tell them not to do that as well.
yeah, exactly. Or a really safe way of doing it is, there's these thing called holy roller balls. um Mine is in the front room, so I can't get it at the second, and
Where
it's,
it's got fleece in it.
well, yes, and you can put things like, so my raw comes with this unbleached sheep's wool packaging, that cool wool stuff. So it's in a
Yes.
little thin plastic layer, but it's natural wool. And as much as I recycle most of mine back to, my raw comes from Paleo Ridge, and they have a scheme where you can save them up and send them back. But I'll keep one, and I will use that sheep's wool, and I will stuff it into this holy rollerball. I think it's HOLEE rollerball. They're on Amazon. They do small ones, which would be ideal Dachshund size, and they also do a slightly larger one that's probably about that big. And you can put, I mean, you could put torn up strips of a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, or any kind of old fabric that you've got lying around.
What about
Um,
paper? What about paper? If
yeah,
like you get something
absolutely.
from
Yeah.
Amazon, brown paper,
Yeah,
dogs
it's
like
more
to rip.
crinkly, it's more noisy. So if you want to work on the sort of the fun, noisy, confidence building stuff, if your dog's comfortable around noises, yeah, that kind of soft brown paper. Yeah, how much of that Amazon paper have we all got coming into our
Yeah.
homes?
I've got a lot of that for the yellow space zone.
Yeah, yeah. No, but it's really good, isn't it? So you can put, and you could put some treats in there, but you
Yeah.
don't have to. So if I'm doing an ace free work setup for Bodie or a client, there might be three stations. And then there also, I might have put down like the holy rollerball with some sheep's wool in it. And if a dog's never seen it before, or the wool that I've put in there is kind of fresh, it doesn't smell too funky, but it still smells of
Mm.
sheep. Bodie will get hold of it and he'll sort of hold it with his paws and he'll pick stuff out with his mouth, and it's fulfilling that desire to shred. And it's quite a full body workout, I think, for a lot of dogs, because they're sort of seeing how they hold it with their paws, and they're plucking out whatever it is that you've
Mm.
put in it. um Things like feathers, like if you see feathers on a walk, you could poke a feather into there. So it can be about smells as well as
Sniffy
food.
station as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I found it interesting once in your group, membership group, where someone said that they pick up sometimes when they go out on the walk in the autumn and things, they pick up a handful of leaves.
yeah, yeah, and bring them back. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, how so especially if a dog is struggling on walks and they find walks overwhelming, they're probably not able to access all of those scents as
Mm.
much as they would like if they were in a more relaxed state. So actually bringing them back, whether you go out with them or you go out separately, and you'll look like a slightly strange person collecting up a loads of leaves in a bag to take home, but you can absolutely just bring that into, you're bringing those scents into your garden, whether you're doing it as part of ace free work or you're just bringing them home. It's a great way of getting
Yeah.
exploration.
You can just put them into a cardboard box, couldn't you?
Yeah,
It's small.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's these things don't need to be complicated. So I think, Heidi, coming back to the original question, like there's lots of things that you can do at home. There's different ways that you can use raw, and also think about other sensory experiences. Um, and so you can get some sort of movement and activity that isn't just about um, eating. Yeah. And also, if you do need to use some handleable dry treats other than raw, just pare back the raw a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Right, should we go to that question that let's have a look. Do-do-do. Okay. So this was from Rosemary. She put this in the messenger chat. She said, I would love to give Teddy a day off from walking, but he won't do his toilet in the garden, so he has to go out at the weekend. He has a quiet time where we only stay local to home, and he has a couple of sniffy road walks. Yeah, so it's interesting, this one. I've had quite a few clients that have had different toilet related struggles, and it does complicate things. If you're wanting to skip a walk, or you need to stop walking for a while if your dog isn't comfortable toilet in the garden, then obviously you have specific needs. One of the lovely ladies in the membership, Gabby, had a really nervous dog that would get so overwhelmed on walks she couldn't toilet on a walk. She could only toilet in the garden. And then they had a particularly unpleasant neighbour before they moved house a few years ago, that at one point this dog was quite nervous of this neighbour, and so the dog used to bark with nerves, and the neighbour shouted at this poor dog. So
Yeah.
then the dog was so nervous she couldn't pee or poo in her own garden.
Oh.
So then, you know, this lady had to, I mean, she was literally getting up at 3, 4, 5 in the morning to drive her dog somewhere that was quiet enough that her dog could relax enough to be able to toilet. And some people say, oh, just leave them. Eventually they will go in the garden. This dog was holding it for days. Like it's
Oh.
days. Like it is a real struggle. Um, I think every situation is different. And excuse me, I've got hay fever starting again. Um, every situation is different. And I'm pausing because there's no quick fix to it. And as I say, everything is very different. So I think if there isn't, they cannot want to toilet in the garden for a whole variety of reasons, some of which I'm sure we would never be aware of. Could it be something like this lady, that the there was something that scared them in that space? if that's the case, is there things that you could do to help them grow more comfortable in that space again? So, confidence building games, scenting games, ace free work, things like that in the garden to help them feel more relaxed in that space? Or is it a sort of a like a cleanliness thing of not wanting to toilet in their den, if you like it, basically where they live, where they sleep, they don't want to toilet there. Um, Also, I see differences in that because other dogs generally are not coming into your own garden, there's less desire to less drive to mark there. So, for instance, for Bodie, he's a boy on a walk, he'll cock his leg high as he can. He wants the smell to be there for the whole world to capture as they go past. In the garden, he does a girl wee. He does a lazy sit down wee. He can't be bothered to cock his leg in the garden. And I think it's something to do with that as well. Of, well, no one
Yeah.
else is going to, no other animal's going to smell it. Therefore, it doesn't matter. They're just going. Um, so it's a little bit complex because you sort of probably need to dig into, why. Um, but aside from that, I'm definitely not saying that just leave them. Eventually they will go because I don't think they will. I think they will make themselves ill
Yeah.
and hold it because they don't feel safe, comfortable enough. They don't feel it's appropriate for whatever reason they don't feel. So I think it is finding whatever quiet space that you can that is the place where the dog feels comfortable. And it might well be that they need the familiarity of it. So there is just one place, there's like a routine to it. It is the place that they know that they go. And yeah, it's whatever is practical from the time of day and the distance from your home. Um, so I think that is not an easy one. Um, and it is about getting them used to that spot for toileting, putting it on a queue if you can. So if you're going to somewhere where you know they're going to go, just putting a queue on it just before they do the action, that can help where you want to encourage them to go elsewhere. I have tried that with
Yeah.
Bodie. I haven't been overly successful. Like it's quite a tricky one. Like Bodie will only go when he wants to go. If I know we're getting in the car for a journey for 2 hours and I want him to go, he's he won't listen to the cue. He's just like,
I
I don't
see.
need to go.
Yeah, I've taught that with Bella because obviously going off in the van and things like that. So every time she wants to go out, I always call it wee wees.
Yeah,
And if I go out into the garden or we stop, if we're going to a show or driving somewhere and we've done a 2, 3 hour drive, we'll get out the van and I'll tell her she's got to do wee wees.
yeah,
90% of the time she will.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. That's good. I haven't managed to crack that with Bodie, but he can be like a camel. Like he'll hold it for 12, 14 hours.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
Just
good.
I think collie he's a collie cross and yeah, and then he'll go and he'll be standing there 3 minutes later going, I'm still going. Probably oversharing, but it's a tricky one, Rosemary, and I think it is just you've got to make sure their needs are met, and sometimes that's not easy for us, and that does mean 5 a.m. in the dark, go to the lay-by. That's what this lovely client of mine used to do, just in order for their dog to be able to go. Um, as they have worked on the dog's confidence and calmness generally, I think the toileting struggles have got easier, but it is a tricky one. I don't have a magic wand for that one, I'm
Hmm.
afraid.
It was quite interesting to see whether there's something that's frightened them in the garden where
Yeah,
you're trying to make it a safe space again with doing the calming and the
yeah,
confident stuff back in the garden to make
yeah,
it feel safe again.
yeah. And maybe also having a space that isn't um is like a more like a different part of the garden. So, for instance, like I mean, our garden isn't big, but we've got one section that's astroturf and planting, and then another area that is stones. Now, some dogs don't like the feeling of stones under their feet. It's actually the bit where Bodhi chooses to poo if he poos in the garden. Um, and I think it's because he spends the most amount of time on the astroturf, like wriggling on it, lying in the sun. Um, so it's like he
Doesn't
doesn't
want a
want to
toilet.
soil his
Mm.
part. But that bit over there, it's like it's not, he doesn't, I don't, he obviously sees that differently. So he's happy to go over there. So, maybe within the garden there could be a separate, a slightly separate area. Um, but you'd need quite a good, strong, go wee wees cue.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I don't think I would want to do a wee in a poo in my lounge. I
Whereas
suppose it's a bit
Matt
like
probably, who knows?
Matt might do.
What?
Yeah, but it's the same thing, isn't it? We just think our dogs are so like us in so many ways, aren't they?
Yeah,
Even with entertainment and stuff. Look how
yeah.
much we enjoy our food and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. What was Heidi saying there regarding neighbours and gardens? Hamley does fence guarding, so can be stressful, especially with people right next to the fence. Very territorial. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's very common. Um, my favorite game to play or coping strategy for that one, um, because I use the same game for a situation with Bodie where he would charge at the fence because there'd be a squirrel running along on top of it, or there was a cat on the shed roof, or magpie had been sitting there eyeballing him, and he would run towards the fence, heckles up, jumping up and barking. Um, we've taught a really solid game of Find It. So my version of Find It is having some high value food and practicing it when they're not in that really heightened state, where you're just tossing a piece of food that lands somewhere in their line of sight somewhere. So you just toss a piece of food, say, find it, toss a piece of food, and it drops. If your dog's not distracted, they'll be like, oh, what's that? And they'll probably pick up the piece of food and eat it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to break their focus and break their eye contact from the thing that will catch their eye, and to engage their seeking system. So we want to get them down and sniffing. Now, we would practice Find It, toss a piece of food when there's nothing else going on. Really easy for game for Bodie. Oh, there's a piece of food. Brilliant. Thanks very much. He'll eat it. Then when they are distracted, hopefully trying to work on some lower level distractions, which for us would be pigeons and magpies, not cats and squirrels. Um, we would toss the piece of food. Bodie might be so focused on the thing that caught his attention that the first piece of food he doesn't see it. It may be the second piece he doesn't see, but it might be the third or the fourth piece. And because our dog's vision largely is very, very good, a lot of them are quite movement driven, depending on the breed. Movement is often quite important to our dogs, much so than anything that they'll hear. Often they will eventually see the piece of food and they kind of can't help themselves. They're like, oh, what was that? Oh, it was a piece of food. Oh gosh, there's another piece of food. Because by now you've thrown three or four pieces. At some point, hopefully one of those pieces of food will catch their attention and you'll get their nose down and sniffing. So they're breaking their attention. The sniffing is going to help their arousal system regulate downwards a little bit. And then you can try and have a game of Find It back away from the trigger, and we would play Find It, and the last piece of Find It is back in through our patio doors, and I can shut the door so we can't run out there and repeat it.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful. So Heidi, that might work with the I'll scroll down that comment. Yeah, with the fence running. The other thing is management. Not letting them just be out there and practice the fence running. If it means popping them on lead to go out with them, to support them, play some games with them, and then they come in with you, if they're not able to be out there without, random passers-by coming and them just sort of bursting into that reaction, then, I would maybe think about what can you do to support them more in the garden, not to let them practice that behavior. That's probably something I would say is helpful.
Yeah.
Heidi said he's good with Find It, but if neighbours are out all day, then it becomes a lot of treats. Yeah, yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but not leaving him out there unsupervised then means, right, okay, we're training. You can have a few treats. We're working on it, and now we don't have any more treats because that'll be too many calories. Now you do need to come in and stay with us, and it does mean that you need to restrict them a little bit from being outdoors, but hopefully you're breaking that cycle.
So what would you do if it was a nice day and you want to be out in the garden, but your neighbour's out in the garden or the dog's neighbour's out in the garden? Would you leave your dog inside or would you allow them to come out if you
I
couldn't?
think it depends. If they're less likely to bark when you're outside, then that's fine. If you're there and you can manage it, um, I'm a big fan of doing boundary games. So we've done a lot of boundary games in the garden. So Bodie used to not be able to jump on us if we were doing some gardening. Like if we were trying to, weed a bed, he'd be like, "Oh, playtime," and he'd be like jumping up on us and just trying to get involved, or trying to eat the rake if we were raking stuff up and things like that. So working on boundary games so that they are able to learn and settle while other stuff is going on. So that one can be helpful. If your dog is okay indoors with you outside, that's not a bad thing. A lot of dogs would struggle with that. Like, hang on, yeah, most of them want to be outside quite a lot, especially when it's warm and sunny.
Yeah, you got the
Smell
doors open.
lots of smells and things like that. So, yeah, I think it depends on what they can cope with, um, and giving them things to do. I think often the things that dogs do that we don't like, they're just giving themselves a job to do. Dogs do need to do stuff. They can't pick up a book, they can't pick up an iPad, um, and we are dependent on their enrichment in life and their entertainment in life. So, um, occupying them when they're out there to help them, they'll still hear those things and they'll still smell those things and see those things, but allowing them to be there and kind of process it, but they're sort of engaged nicely in something else. And so,
Yeah, that ball thing would be quite good then, wouldn't
yeah,
it? To give them something like that to do. Or
yeah. Or if you ever if you give your dog a bone once or twice a week, as part of their raw, I love Bodie having a bone on the lawn,
hmm,
because there's no mess in the house, and he's so engaged in the bone. Unless a magpie flies down and lands within a meter, he's so focused on it. Like he's
yeah,
like, I'm not worried about you. I'm having a really good time. And so he's able to be out there for longer while practicing something that is calm and lovely. He loves an ostrich bone, yeah, and a bomb can go off. Yes, exactly that. I know exactly what you mean. So yeah, so that could be great garden time.
planning. Yeah,
That
planning a
ostrich bone
bone.
must be pretty much the same length as
As
Hamley.
the dog, as Hamley, yeah. But I can only give Bella those sort of like raw marrow bones and things in the summer because obviously I don't want this raw thing, bone indoors on the carpet or
Mm,
anything like that. She's got a thing about taking a treat into the lounge on the carpet.
yeah, yeah. So I have these big throws, big synthetic. They're red. Obviously, red is my favorite color. Big synthetic throws that go over the sofa, and we have this massive bean bag. And every 2 days, they're in the wash. So I
Yeah.
will actually, if it's really rubbish weather, I will let him have a raw bone either in his crate, and we've got a washable cover on the crate thing, or on this big bean bag. And that's where he'll take it. He'll just go and he'll sit in the middle of this massive bean bag and he'll chew it till it's gone. And then I just bundle up the throw and put it on a hot wash. And then I put it on a second wash with my Ingenious Probiotics laundry wash to put the good gut bacteria, the good microbes back into it. So I will allow a bone inside if I have to, but I would much rather he's outside.
Outside, yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Right. Okay. I put this call in for 45 minutes. I didn't know how long we would wish her on for, but we
We
should
could go all
probably.
day.
I know I can. I know.
Yeah, but we can do another one. It's fine. This is the introduction one, and people can go and watch it back, can't they? And
Yeah.
see the sort of things that we talk about, just ideas and things like that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, people will join in next time.
Yeah. And we can take it in any direction that people want to. So yeah. Fabulous. Well, thanks very much for joining us. And if you watch this back on replay, and you're watching this on social media somewhere, pop us a comment in below and let us know what you thought of it. Thanks, guys.
Bye.